Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Fertility Podcast, the place where we dive deep into all things fertility. I'm Dr. Brenna Squires, a clinical psychologist and fertility support coach, here to bring you the knowledge, resources, and expert insights you need to feel confident along your journey to parenthood. So let's get started. Hey everyone, and welcome back. I am really excited for today's topic. We are talking all about womb healing, and I'm speaking with an expert in this, Dr. Katie Wood. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Katie.
Hi, Dr. Brenna. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so happy you're here. I'm happy to talk to somebody who not only knows what this is, but has training and experience in doing this modality. And so before we jump into understanding more about womb healing, can you share how you even heard about this in the first place? Because with my experience, I've only ever heard about womb healing through, Instagram scrolls or quick Facebook posts. And I really didn't know much about it until talking with you and hearing that there's actually a process and a structure and training involved in this. And so can you share a little bit more about how you first learned about this?
All right, yeah, that's a really, really great question. So, I'm a pharmacist. That's my background. So, very much conventionally trained. And my husband and I, we struggled to get pregnant ourselves. And eventually, I actually shifted from working in retail pharmacy to becoming what I now call myself as a holistic fertility practitioner. And in the very early stages of fertility coaching, I like to say that I was focused on the things that we typically maybe see and focus on in Western medicine. So looking at people's labs, diet and lifestyle, all of, sleep, stress, all of those things, and all of those things play such an important part in our fertility, in our health, and all of those things. But when you have someone who is maybe already doing all of that. And maybe, perfection is an illusion, but let's just say like they're really eating a healthy diet, like an actual healthy diet that's right for their body. They're taking the supplements, they're tracking their cycle, they're ovulating every month. The sperm health is great, but they're still not getting pregnant. And I saw that with some of my clients, and it just made me wonder, is there something else out there? Is there something missing that we're not addressing and that's not being addressed? Like, so many of us are struggling with fertility these days. The rates are just increasing, and it's for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of that being our food, our very high stress, go, go, go lifestyle. But there's also a lot of other things that kind of go with it as well. So I just became kind of curious and open. And of course, like you said, you maybe see things about womb healing on Instagram. And there was this account that I was following, and she was also in fertility and also experienced the same things as a fertility coach. She was coaching them, her clients, on all of the physical aspects of fertility, but some of them still weren't getting pregnant. So she also began questioning, why is that? And she actually came out with a certification for to become an embodied womb practitioner. And I just intuitively knew, like, this is what I have been missing in my practice. This is what I've been looking for. So I took the certification, and it's called embodied womb practitioner. And one of the things that she spoke to, which was just such a light bulb moment for me, was in that certification, I actually became embodied in the practice myself. I went through all of the steps that I take my clients through. And then that way I can actually, one, understand what they're going through, relate to it, share my own lived experience, where so many of us, both of us went to college, we have our degrees and all those things. We go to school, we kind of like learn and take in and memorize the information, but it's not actually embodied on a cellular level within ourselves. And when something is embodied or you're embodied in something, you are able to teach it and pass it on and guide people in such a deeper way. So I was really fascinated with it. It just made sense to me. But that's essentially in a nutshell where that came from, how I learned about it, and how I became trained in it.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And you said something that is a common thread that I've heard throughout several different guests where you asked the question, is there something else? Because I feel like I'm doing everything right, or I'm doing what seems to be what I'm told. I'm following instructions, I'm eating, I'm exercising. Is there something else? And I also liked how you said being curious and being open to something slightly different, because sometimes we can be so closed off. Psychologically speaking, we can be closed off with just what we know in the traditional sense that if we hear something else, we think, oh, that's not gold standard, or that's not going to work because my doctor would have told me about that. So I really like hearing that you were curious, you were open, and that when you heard it, it kind of just resonated within you. You just kind of felt like this is it. This feels right. And so I love hearing about that because I feel the same thing with it feels right. I think as women, we all know when something feels right in that sense. And then the last thing I want to hit on, and you can go deeper into this, is the embodiment that you went through it yourself. And before we go a little bit more into that, can you share what your experience was like going through that process yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to think of how I can best explain that. Going through any sort of, let's just say, trauma healing, so to say, it can feel uncomfortable, right? A lot of us weren't raised with the proper tools and know how to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. So I think having to go through that myself and learning how I can support myself through it, cope through it, that then gives me the tools to be able to help my clients go through it. So I'll definitely say that there were pieces where it's like, wow, this is like new territory for me. And a lot of the practices are really guided meditations, and things came up for me that I went through during childhood. My parents got divorced when I was very, very young, and I was able to kind of heal those wounded parts of me that I was holding on to since childhood. And oftentimes as adults, we don't realize how certain things impacted us, especially when we were children. And we hold on to those energies within our bodies. So it was a really humbling experience, right? It was a learning experience for myself. I really learned a lot about how to hold certain emotions, how to take maybe radical responsibility for how I'm showing up for myself or in relationships for things that uh, you know, might be coming up for me to heal. And because a lot of times our ego just kind of wants to pop in and like protect us and keep our own like sense of identity. We A lot of times I feel like the ego likes to blame other people instead of being like, well, actually I'm kind of showing up in this way too. It 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 connected a lot of dots for me personally, and then I think it gave me the tools so then I can, you know, verbally kind of guide my clients through the same struggles or difficulties that they might have come up for them as well.
Yeah, and thank you for your vulnerability and sharing the different aspects of it and how you I heard two different lenses with how you experienced it as a professional, but also how you experienced just as a person and as a woman going through these steps. And one thing that I really want the listeners out there to hear from this, at least this that I got, was when you feel like there's something else and that the area that you're going through is not working, there is something else. And you're a testament to that because you went through school. You're a doctor of pharmacy. You went through all of the schooling. You have holistic fertility practice. You went through all of that and still you found something else that you could learn. Not just a new process, but new tools that you yourself went through, you experienced, and now you have that for other people. So it kind of goes back to that trust your gut, so to speak. If you feel like there's something wrong deep down inside, or there's something off, or there's something else you can do, that's probably because there is. And if any of what Dr. Katie said piqued your interest, keep listening because we're going to go deeper into that. And so let's jump right in. So what exactly is womb healing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And, you'll probably see different definitions or other people's own personal definitions potentially on social media, like you said. But essentially, in a nutshell, womb healing is healing ancestral, collective, and your own personal wounding and trauma to restore your flow of vital life force energy, reclaiming your feminine power, intuition, creativity, and thus fertility. Fertility is, yes, getting pregnant, creating life, but it's also creating ideas. As women, we just our womb space is where all of our creativity and fertility, right? Fertility is quite literally taking something, an idea or, an embryo, and bringing that idea to life, bringing that baby to life. And when we're doing this womb healing, you're able to tap back into that. And I think so many of us are disconnected from that very vital piece of ourselves. And I know I was. And I think, just kind of as like a side note, I was on birth control for 13 years, and that essentially suppresses your your menstrual cycle, your hormones, and I think that that's where a lot of that creativity is kind of lost. And I think that that's where I lost it personally. And when I got off of birth control, I was able to really, really kind of harness that energy back in.
Yes, and you had said so many words. I was trying to write them down, but that summary had so many different words into it, but the two words that stood out the most to me were trauma and energy. And how trauma, different types of trauma, where it's trauma that you've experienced or trauma from past, there's some type of trauma, and that can be, as we learned in different episodes, it can be emotional, physical, sexual, mental. There's different types of traumas, and then that impacts your energy. Tell us a little bit more about that energy flow. I know we learned in another episode, another podcast episode on Chinese medicine, a little bit about that chi energy. But can you share a little bit more about the energy flow, at least as it relates to fertility?
Yeah. So we're all energy beings, right? Everything really on this earth is energy. Even like my mouse for my computer is made of energy. And when we experience things in our life, whether it is any of those different types of traumas that you mentioned, sometimes you can hear of big T trauma, little t trauma, things like that. It can essentially be anything that potentially made you feel unsafe or unloved as you were growing up, or, even in your adult life as well. And you weren't able to process it in the moment. You weren't able to actually sit with the feelings, the emotions, and kind of release them. And what can happen is that energy, I like to call it, it ends up being like stagnant energy, can actually embed itself in various organs of the body, and it can impact the flow of our energy. So if you think about a really big boulder in a stream, the water is can't go through the boulder. It has to go around it. So the energy has to go around this stuck or stagnant, like blocked energy that we got maybe when we were 5 years old for various reasons. And that it essentially, I like to say it kinks the hose of your energy, and that can impact your reproductive hormones. So a lot of times, like when women are suffering from PCOS or endometriosis, yes, those are all physical things that we can see on lab results. We can do, like the laparoscopic surgery and see the endometriosis. We can take the ultrasounds and see the cysts on the ovaries. But it all started energetically on an energetic level. And when it's not being addressed, it just kind of builds and builds and builds, and then it manifests into physical symptoms. So, your PCOS, your painful periods. I will give you a personal, perfect example. I was an assistant at a health conference a year or so ago. And I was needing to get up on stage, speak on a microphone. I was going to do my own like little presentation, but also just as kind of the assistant as well. Public speaking, ever since I can remember, has been something that I did not enjoy. I would almost have like an out of body experience, like when I would do it, like literally just leave my body. And I worked with a practitioner beforehand to help release some of that. And he did find some ancestral trauma that I was carrying. So, anyways, I worked with this practitioner. He was amazing. I was able to public speak really with very, very minimal discomfort and like duress within my body. And at the same time, I got my period the same weekend of this conference. I had 0 cramps. I had no symptoms whatsoever, and usually I would get cramps, like, the first day of getting my period. I had nothing. So I messaged him and I was like, "Oh, the conference went great, thank you so much." And I also wanted to just share, like, I started my cycle and I had no symptoms that it was even coming. And he said, "Yeah, releasing whatever you were holding on to could have very well dislodged, or maybe that's where some of the energy was being stored, is in my reproductive space." And he had helped me release that. So that's just kind of a really cool example of how it can show up in actually multiple facets in multiple ways of your life.
Yes. And you had said something just right now that made me think about um in a simple term what all of this means is in that releasing what we're holding on to. And I don't think we realize how much our body holds on to things that when we don't forgive or when we don't process like you had said with even if it's just something that happened unexpectedly that we weren't ready for. It may not have been a huge traumatic event where you can say that was a trauma, but maybe it was something unexpected that you didn't know what to do and you just kind of suppress the emotion. All of those things that you're suppressing, they go somewhere. And I like the example that you said that it kind of kinks that energy hose. But when you think about it, the more we suppress, the more kinks we have in our body. And if we don't un unkink them or like you said, in another word, release them, then we're just gonna have all of this stagnation and all of these problems in our body. And then that's gonna lead to more again, more mental health issues, more physical issues, more relational issues. And that just stood out to me as as a really big thing in all areas that we just need to release what we have that we're holding on to, and so that leads me into the how does this process work? Because I kind of gave, like, a little introduction, but how does the process of womb healing work?
Mhm. So there are technically a few different ways that we can do it. If it's me working with a client, it's definitely learning about them, learning about their past, learning about what they perceive could be they're like top limiting beliefs or traumas or wounds and things like that. And then getting them to feel safe in their own body and to so many of us are living from our neck up. We're living in our head and we're not in our bodies at all. And when things do come up in our bodies, we suppress it, we ignore it, we move on. So this is a very, very pivotal and important piece, is learning how to feel safe in your body and to feel safe within, any emotions or sensations that come up, right? Has anyone ever started crying or getting upset about something and maybe you start feeling a lump in your throat? Or maybe the sensations you feel are like just like a rock in your stomach, or like your stomach just does not feel good. People have various sensations that their bodies potentially go to. So really learning how you can safely feel those and be within your body. But there's also a 4-step womb work framework that really the listeners could start doing at any time. Now, I will say it could come easier to some, more so than others. It really, again, goes back to how comfortable are you getting, really going into your body, slowing down, slowing things down, listening to your body, being within your body. Now, believe me, I am the type of person who does not like to cry and things like that. So I can completely relate with how this is just uncomfortable, and maybe some people are like, I just don't want to do that. But when you really can start doing it, it does make such a difference in your life. But so the first step in the framework is just, again, bringing in that curiosity that I had spoken to, building more self awareness and just kind of noticing things within your life. So essentially looking for patterns that life is mirroring to you or trying to show you, that are ready to heal within your life. So, an easy example, because I feel like most women can relate, that I like to give is, maybe you're getting into the same argument over and over again with your partner. Maybe they don't pick up their dirty laundry, or they're not loading the dishwasher the right way, whatever it may be, but that it just keeps coming up. And maybe it's in different situations or scenarios, but it keeps coming up. You guys keep getting into the same argument. And really, when you boil it down, maybe it's coming down to a specific wound that you're holding on to. So, step number one is just building that awareness and noticing, huh, we really keep arguing about his lack or poor ability to do chores around the house, whatever it may be. And then number two is, we just want to kind of witness and observe what we're noticing, but we want to do it without any elevated emotion or reaction. We want to neutralize it, and we want to ideally neutralize the need for any blaming or shaming. So we don't want to blame other people. We don't want to shame ourselves or shame other people. And maybe just think about it. And this can be hard, again, because the ego can want to chime in and kind of keep you protected and safe, so to say. A lot of times it can be hard for people to own up to what they have done and take responsibility for what they have done. So really kind of looking at it, maybe even try to look at it from an outsider's perspective of, well, how am I showing up to this argument? Am I just flying off the handle when I see a dirty sock on the floor? How am I communicating with my partner that this is something that is upsetting me? And again, just very neutral, just kind of looking at the scenario and realizing how you're showing up. How are you participating in this conflict? And then step three is all about releasing and alchemize. So you can decide, you know what, I'm going to be easier on my partner about not picking up their things. It's not as important to them as it is me. If it bothers me, then I'll just pick it up. So essentially, you can decide to shift your mindset, however feels good to you. Shift your mindset about the situation. Or you can take it to the body with an intention to do a healing session. So this could be as simple as, you could do your own mindful breathing mindful connection within yourself, or you could do a guided meditation as well, and bring to the practice in setting the intention that I am wanting to release. Either maybe you have a specific thought about it, or I'm ready to release whatever is ready to be released that keeps triggering this same conflict. And then you'll go through the meditation or your own kind of self-guided mindful breathing, and just kind of allow for whatever wants to come up. For example, maybe I have an inner child healing meditation that I'll have my clients do. And maybe you do that. You do the meditation and a memory comes back to your mind. And it was a time where maybe your parent or your teacher or some sort of adult authority figure didn't listen to you or didn't take you seriously or your needs seriously when you were younger. So now can you see how, oh, I'm taking that with me into adulthood, and that's why I'm getting so triggered every time my husband's not doing what I'm asking him to, because then I'm left feeling unheard and unseen and unimportant. So it's kind of like it's these little puzzle pieces that you put together. So that's a really good example. And then step 4 would be to just integrate and embody. So maybe after the healing practice, you journal it out and you kind of just try to see what else wants to come out up and out of you. And a lot of times that can be healing in and of itself, but then you can decide who you are going to be moving forward and what type of actions you want to take. So maybe it's just having a an actual like sit down conversation with your partner, and you can explain to them, I'm feeling like you're kind of disregarding what is important to me in terms of how we take care of our house and our home that we live in together. And it would really mean a lot to me if you could please pick up your dirty clothes and put them in the hamper. Maybe you never actually sat down with them and explained why it was important to you. Maybe you just harped on them and got on, quite literally just like got on their ass about it and started yelling at them. Maybe you reacted to the situation instead of responded, and that's okay, right? Always remember, no blame, no shame. You didn't necessarily know in the moment what you were doing, and that is the trigger, right? But when we bring in that step 1, that awareness piece that allowed you to realize, oh, yeah, this keeps happening. And then you take it through this process, and ideally you're able to shift it afterwards.
Yes, and I really liked something that you just said right now with the no blame, no shame. It goes into one of the things that I tell my clients often, which is you did the best that you could with what you had at that time.
Mhm.
And really kind of narrowing that down into those specific words, because when you know better, you do better. When the time shifts, you have different tools, and so just kind of going back into that, those were the tools that you had, and it's not helpful to blame yourself for the limited tools that you had because you did the best that you could.
Exactly.
And the other thing I wanted to share, and I have a question about, is with all of these different steps, what are you doing? Are you doing something to them physically? Are you walking them through? I heard you say you were walking them through a guided thing. Um, I guess kind of break it down a little bit further with what are you doing versus what is the client doing in this situation?
Mhm. So this framework is something that somebody could do on their own. So my clients have a set of pre-recorded meditations. And of
Mm,
course, if they need me to, I would definitely recommend a uh, like, I think this meditation would be the best one for you to do in this situation. If we are doing a live one-on-one call for them, basically how it would start is I would ask them, what is most alive for you right now? Like, what is going on in your life that's maybe stressing you out or just like making you feel uneasy? And we'll talk about that. And we'll just kind of talk about it. And so it's really, that's taking care of step 1. And step 2, maybe I need to help shift their perspective on the situation. If they're kind of having trouble seeing it through a different lens or something like that in terms of taking the radical responsibility, reminding them, give yourself grace. We're not blaming or shaming ourselves because of the situation. And then basically taking them through a guided meditation. So if we're on a live one-on-one call, that would just be me basically doing the meditation with them, getting them comfortable, closing your eyes, getting them grounded in their body, taking them through the healing session. And then at the end of the session, that's when we kind of regroup. They can share with me anything that came up. We can talk about it. And then it's really kind of, okay, what are you deciding for yourself moving forward? Um, what what type of action steps do you want to do? And I should have said too, we always set an intention before we go into the healing practice as well. So you're able to do this on your own at home, but I do think for people who are newer to this process, it is best to have the one-on-one guidance to really walk you through it.
Yeah, 100%. The guidance seems really important, especially if you're really new or you're not familiar with it, because even as you were speaking, it reminded me of how familiar this is with different therapeutic practices. And so it sounds like it could be like a cognitive behavioral therapy where we focus on the thoughts, the cognitions, as well as the behavior. But then it also blends in more of an ACT, an acceptance and commitment therapy where you're accepting things and you're committing to that change. But I also like how it's not a therapy. It is something that kind of walks you through how to process different things and walks you through how to break things down and then also moves you into that mindfulness and that meditation. So it's a little bit different, but has some of the same features.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely intertwines different aspects of healing modalities for sure.
Yes. And then who would benefit from this? Because it sounds like it would actually be beneficial for more than just women who are trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, everyone. Pretty much everyone and anyone who has a pulse on this planet could benefit from this. Absolutely. I do think in order to really get the most from it, you do have to have a level of openness and being ready. Cause, a lot of people might hear about this and look at it and say, oh, that's total woo woo. That doesn't work. That's weird or something like that. And if you have that mindset, it's going to be very hard for this to really click and work. So I think everyone could benefit from it, but it might not be the right tool for
Mm,
everyone
yeah.
at all the time. Someone could be totally turned off by it or appalled today,
Hmm.
but give them 6 months and maybe they've gone through some things and they've had like a personal awakening and then they're ready to step into this work. So even for myself, if this was, I don't know, we'll just say 2013, I would be like, I don't know what this is. Even when I really started learning more about trauma, I thought to myself, I don't have any trauma. I had a pretty good childhood. I don't have any trauma. But really, when you start kind of peeling back the layers and learning what trauma really is, it's like, oh, okay. I I have trauma. We all have trauma. And like I said, it's really to help heal personal, collective, and ancestral traumas. So when your mother or when your grandmother was pregnant with your mom at about 4 months gestation, your mother was developing all the eggs that she would ever have. So you were actually in your mom's body while your mom was still growing in your grandma for about 5 months. So if you think about it, that just keeps being passed on and on and on and on and there was a time in history where our ancestors, I mean, they were in straight up survival mode, depending on what was going on. War, famine, so many different things. And you can see in family lineages where things just seem to happen. Like I've had clients where all women on their mom's side just have a history of miscarriages or whatever it may be, and then the client in present day has a bicornuate uterus where they have like the septum growing in between, in between the uterus, and it's almost like that's the body's protective mechanism
Mm,
if you think about it.
yeah.
So it's just quite interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And you had said this a little bit ago with where are you holding that trauma? And I like how you explained it again with we think about trauma and we think about all of the big traumas, but we don't really think about the little traumas in the sense that how does our body perceive it? Even if we don't think it's traumatic, did our body perceive it as traumatic to the point where our body chose to suppress it? And then with that, where? I like how you said that. Where did it choose to suppress it? Because sometimes I know Chinese medicine talks a lot about those different emotions and how there's certain emotions stored in the liver, and some of it's stored in the kidneys, and some of it's stored in the uterus. But we actually forget about that with, like you just said, it could have been stored in our uterus during our lifespan. It could have been stored in our moms based off of all of those things. And it's just interesting when you factor in all of those pieces that where is that trauma being stored? And we don't really think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I was talking earlier about feeling comfortable feeling the sensations in your body,
Mm,
typically if something is coming up and it's upsetting you and you're feeling it in a certain area of your body, that's the energy to me being ready and saying, "Hi, I'm here for you to like release me." And so that's kind of another piece of what we can do is really learning how to again, like I said, we have to be grounded and feel safe in our body, feeling the sensations, but you can some of the healing practices that we do is quite literally, breathing in to that sensation. So breathing, like you can picture in your mind when you're breathing in, you're breathing energy into that spot wherever you're feeling that sensation. And then when you're exhaling, you are breathing out that stagnant energy and you are releasing it. So usually where if you are feeling sensations in your body, it's because there is something that is stored there. A lot of times people who maybe feel like they don't feel seen or heard, they might feel a lump in their throat quite a bit when things kind of are coming up for them or upsetting them. And that's because stagnant energy is being stored in that area.
yeah, and that's really interesting that where you're feeling that tension, it started making me think of all the places that I've heard from clients where some people when they get stressed or tense, they'll feel it in their shoulders,
Mhm,
whereas others, like you said, might feel it in their throat. Some might feel it in their stomach or their lower abdomen area.
mhm.
And so if we think about some of those places, the lower abdomen, the pelvic area, uterus, that's where fertility, stomach, that gut brain connection, lump in our throat, our thyroid, where our hormones are produced. And so all of
Exactly.
these common areas where, as you said it, that they get stored, all of those impact our reproductive system.
Mhm,
Goodness gracious. And so with this, as people are working through this process, you also said a lot of this is meditation and mindfulness and guided breathing. Do you think it will take people a long time to learn how to settle this? Do you commonly see that some people more than others would take longer to settle their bodies?
That's a really good question. So, we are typically holding on to it's really hard to say. Some people are holding on to a lot more trauma than other people. So, I like to think of it as layers of an onion. And doing one session is not going to heal everything, even in a specific organ or area. You are able to heal what the body is ready to release in that moment. Otherwise, if you think about it, if we were to release everything at once, like that would probably just send our body, off into I don't know, highly dysregulated. So
Yeah.
it's really just layers at a time depending on what the body is ready to release in that moment. So sometimes you might have to come back to the same practice over and over again. And it's not like you want to do it every day or anything like that. It's when you're feeling good and ready to do that, and also bringing that self-awareness in where, okay, I'm just realizing that this trigger keeps rearing its ugly head in my life. That's when you take it into this practice. So for some people, maybe it's a once a week type thing. Maybe it's once a month. It just kind of depends where your life is mirroring to you, when and where and how your life is mirroring things to you that are ready to be healed. So it's honestly, I feel like it's one of those things that you just practice for life, essentially. In like I said, having the guidance in the beginning is priceless. And then honestly, like that 4-step framework I can sometimes just do myself within that moment, and I don't even have to take it through a practice. I'm just able to kind of witness it, neutralize it, and then shift and just decide like I'm going to show up differently in this area of my life that keeps coming up as a trigger. So I think eventually as you become more and more um attuned to this, you're able to do it quicker, you're able to do it more efficiently, and maybe it won't come up for you as often. But yeah, it's lots of different layers. And really, when your body is feeling safe, supported, and nourished to be able to release certain traumas.
And I like how you emphasized several times it's really helpful in the early stages to do this with somebody because that allows you to, it sounds like it allows you to feel safer because now you have somebody who's there for you in the event something, if you, because your body's like, something's going to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong, but there's this protective mechanism of what happens. But to have somebody there as kind of a helper in case you feel something that you don't know, I think it could be also really beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when things get kind of uncomfortable and maybe you don't really understand why such and such is coming up for you. It's really helpful to have someone there to help either you shift your perspective on it or kind of see it through a different lens. Cause like we talked in the beginning, like we can just have blinders on, and it's helpful to have that outside perspective to kind of bring you back down to earth and ground you.
Yeah. And so to look at this, I guess to debunk some of the myths, because you shared a couple of words that I feel like if some listeners were zoning in and out, they are probably going all over the place. And so I've heard a couple of different things with this that I just want you to set the record straight. Are you physically manipulating anything in your body? You, the practitioner, or the person? Are you like massaging your body in any way?
I'm not doing anything. Everything I do with my clients is virtual. And for the individual person, not necessarily. You do not have to touch your body, but if intuitively it comes up for you, like that you want to massage a certain area, or even maybe just hold your hand
Mm,
on that area, you absolutely can do that if it feels safe and aligned and good for you and it intuitively it's coming up and you're just going to follow your intuition, which ideally with this practice you'll become more in tune with your intuition, then absolutely. But it's not required. No one, and you don't ever have to touch your body in order to have this work.
okay. And then another thing that came to my mind that I've heard people ask is, are you I know you said you don't have to touch, but would there be ever a time where there's like oils rubbed on your body or crystals or something like that?
You don't have to do that, but again, if it feels good, I have an Etsy shop and I make a womb oil, like a womb massage oil, and you can absolutely do that, especially for someone who is maybe on a fertility journey and that is just an area of focus for them. You can do a nice womb massage before your practice, after your practice. Crystals definitely not necessary, but if you feel connected to a certain crystal, or I know rose quartz can have some fertility, self-love, compassion benefit. You can use crystals if you want. Those things are totally optional, and just whatever feels good to the person.
And so I ask those questions because some people, it sounds like with the, I don't know how to say this, but like woo woo factor with like things that get weird, you can almost make it, you can go as far or as not as far as you want it to go. If you want to do those things, you can, but if you don't want to, it sounds like you can also just kind of sit, you're not touching, no one's touching you, no one's doing anything to you, but you're really just thinking and breathing and moving, um, like visualizing, so to speak.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think uh, like a necessity common theme for all of this is feeling safe in your
Feeling
body,
safe.
and
Yes.
in being able to live from the neck down and not just our logical brain, actually living in our body. So when you do have things that come up,
Mm,
that's like, oh, my body is really telling me that this doesn't feel good. You can notice that, and you
mm,
can hear it, and
yeah,
you'll trust it too.
yeah.
Hearing it and noticing it and then trusting it are two very, very different things. So one example that I like to give is, say you've maybe done some fertility treatments and they failed, and your doctor is like, okay, let's do your third IVF round. And if your stomach feels like it's going to drop, right? Like you're going down a roller coaster, that's your body saying, maybe
Mm,
pump the brakes, right? Maybe
mm,
you're not, it's not a like a no that we're not going to do this. Maybe it's we need to step back and think about this and look at our options, and maybe look at, is there something else that I'm missing? Or maybe you're getting this like this nagging feeling that, and I've had women say this to me, I just feel like there's something else I could be doing or I should be doing before I do this step. And it's trusting that feeling. So with my first pregnancy, I got a very strong feeling in the middle of my pregnancy that I wanted to do a home birth. The
mm.
thought of walking into a hospital felt very constricting and not safe in my body. And I trusted it, and we switched, and I'm very happy that I made that kind of, not last
Totally.
minute, but like midway decision change. And I think it's important when those little intuitive hits
Yeah.
drop for us, being able to take what our body is saying to us and trusting it.
Yeah, and I loved that story because and everything that you just said, because the word of the hour is safe. You're
Hmm.
really helping yourself feel safe, and you're teaching yourself to trust your own intuition about what safe means. Not what you were taught in the past or what you may think, but you're actually listening to your body and trusting that your body knows what safety feels like for your body.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we're all our own best healers, and our doctors don't know our bodies better than we do. And really just kind of trusting that, especially on the fertility journey. Because when you do become a parent, you're really going to have to be in tune with that muscle for your children. And I think that building that muscle starts with you. And I think that the fertility journey is a beautiful time and space to really work on that.
Yeah, and you just said something that I want to encourage other people with what you just said, with doctors don't know you or your body as much as you do. And for those who are saying, and I don't know my body all that well, this sounds like you know your body more than your doctor, but to take it to that next step, this will help you know and connect with your body so much more.
100%. Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful. And so I just want to know, as we're kind of coming to a close here, do you have any clients that you can think of or any stories of someone who used this for fertility and they got pregnant?
Absolutely. I have a really good one. So this client was actually dealing with a luteal phase defect. We worked on nutrition and lifestyle, but we did do a lot of this womb work together, and she was very much open to it, which I think is what helped her get results. So she's doing this work, and she decided, even though that logically it did not make sense, rationally it did not make sense, she left her job, her current job, and because I think she had some like another opportunity, but it was scary. It was a scary change for her, but she decided, even though this feels scary, this feels like the best step for me. She did that, and in that same cycle, she got pregnant. Now, I will also share, she was testing her PDG levels, which is a progesterone metabolite. Her levels were so low that the tracker said, "You didn't ovulate this month. You can stop tracking." Well, she got a positive pregnancy test, and you would think because of what her results were, her progesterone was really low, and even if conception did happen, it would possibly not be a viable pregnancy. She never had to supplement with progesterone, and she has a healthy baby girl. So it's like you can't like it doesn't logically make sense. Like how did she get pregnant? How did she sustain the pregnancy? And it was all within that same cycle where she decided to leave that job, and I think energetically that opened up a ton of space for her. And I think even just as like a side note, I see a lot of women with very busy schedules, go, 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 go. And a child possibly could not fit into that schedule. And it's like when you decide to actually, change that and act as if you do have a child in your life now, you're opening up this space energetically. So, yeah, that story always just gives me chills because it happens so quickly too. We were working for maybe 2 to 3 months
Mhm.
together.
Yeah, and I like how you said logically, rationally, some of these things don't make sense. But there's a lot of things that don't make sense. They don't add up. Just that's even what led you to womb healing in the first place. There's something else out there because everything logically says there shouldn't be something else out there, but
Hmm.
there is. And so it kind of brings us full circle in this moment. And before we go, are there any final thoughts that you have for the listeners if they're interested in exploring womb healing?
Let's see. I would say just becoming curious and really leaving the blame and shame to the side and trying to figure out what could you start incorporating into your day to day, whether it's in the morning, you take a couple of minutes just to put your hand on your heart if that feels good, close your eyes and just breathe and focus on your breath and allow anything that comes up to come up, and it'll just kind of drift off. I feel like a lot of times we feel like our mind needs to be blank and empty for meditations to work, but that's just not the case. So just finding a way that you can connect with yourself. Maybe it's just going outside in the sun and enjoying your cup of coffee or your cup of tea or your lunch or just anything like that, and kind of silencing everything else, right? I feel like we're always plugged into something, and I'm guilty of this myself. Plugged into the radio, a podcast, whatever it may be, even reading a book or an audible, just silence it all and just being with yourself in nature, in your home, connecting with yourself, whether it's in the morning, at night, whatever feels good to you. I think that is really going to build that intuitive muscle that everything else will just fall into place.
Wonderful. Silence. And that's really big for us right now. We just kind of need to slow down and silence things to be able to start getting attuned with our mind and body. Yes. And if someone is listening to this podcast and they think, I'm really enjoying what you are saying, how can they reach out to you either asking questions or possibly work with you?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm very active on there at the_wellness_pharmacist. You could head to my website, happynourishedmotherhood.com. I have a ton of free resources on there for you as well. And then also I have my podcast too I have so many episodes where I talk about different kind of variations of this energetic work, nervous system work. So, finally, Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. You can check that out. Yeah. And if you ever have any questions, my DMs are always open. I have conversations with ladies and men every single day, just trying to point them in the best direction in terms of how they can, optimize their chances of getting pregnant.
Yes, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you taking the time to not just be here, but break down what womb healing is and that whole practice and debunk some myths for us. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. And I hope that it helps even just one person have an aha moment, and that would just make my day.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I'm pretty sure many people listening will have a lot of aha moments because like I had said early on in this episode, we don't hear about this often. And if we do, it's just a quick glance. So if you've taken the time to listen to this episode, you will have tons of aha moments. And so again, thank you so much, listeners. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or comments, put it in the comment section. Take care. Until next time. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Empowered Fertility Podcast. If you're looking for personalized support on your journey, whether that's through therapy or coaching, please reach out. Just complete the contact form linked in the show notes, and someone from my team will be in touch with next steps. Remember, you are not alone. You are not broken, and your story is not over. See you in the next episode.